All right, so good morning. My name is Danny Diaz. I'm the head referee for the championship tournament here in Central Texas. I'm also a member of the executive committee here that actually runs and puts this whole thing on. It's a sort of a core group of volunteers. We're all volunteers here. There was a great question in the last little session about how the organizational structure works. And so you've got the mothership, U.S. First, and then you've got everybody who is completely unpaid but loves what they do and wants to support what they do, and that's who we are. So if you have any questions or anything whatsoever, kind of issues, problems, we will certainly help resolve those. But remember, we're volunteers. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to talk about the robot game. Okay. Now, I want to stress that, and you'll hear this several times in my presentation, that the robot game is not the most important thing of the competition. Okay? It is the thing that your parents, of your students, your team members, are going to see. Okay? Every year, I have at least 4 parents at every qualifier that I go to who come to me and start just griping me from head to toe about their kid and their kid's team was 4th place in the competition and didn't get to move on to the championship. And they're yelling at me, why in the heck, doesn't their team get to go? And the problem is obviously, the robot competition is not the #1 thing here. Okay, you win that Champions Award, and you get to go. You do a really good research project, and you have a really good chance of going. You win in the competition, you've got a good chance you're going to go. But if you're not #1 in the competition in this game, then odds are you're not going to be that good. So I recommend that this season you spend all your time on that project, because that's the way you move on. The game is sort of the bait, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. But first thing we want to do this morning is go ahead and watch a couple of videos that will hopefully harp on what I've just said, and then give you a brief rundown of the game, the strategy, well, not strategy, but the missions and how they're played. So let me go ahead and swap over.
The complete first LEGO League experience. It can be easy to get carried away with the designing, building, and programming of the FLL robot, but remember that the performance score of a robot is only 25% of a team's score at a tournament. Equally important to the team's total score are your efforts in the project, where you research a topic and effectively present a well-thought-out explanation of your team's creative solution. The technical interview, where you explain the technical aspects of your robot's design and programming. Teamwork, where you work effectively as a team and demonstrate FLL core values. Each of these additional areas contributes 1/4 of your score for the day. Do not lose sight of the importance and skill building that each of these components can have on your team. Important FLL documents. Welcome to the 2009 First LEGO League Season Smart Move. Before explaining the various missions that teams will work so hard to accomplish, I'd like to take a moment to point out something very important. Like chess and soccer, the First LEGO League Annual Challenge has rules too. You absolutely must know them. Teams and team members need to take the time to carefully read the 4 main sections that describe the challenge in detail. It makes no difference if you are a returning team or new to First LEGO League. You need to work with the correct information. For example, would a change in the rules about bringing an object back to base have an impact on your strategy? Well, if you didn't take the time to read the rules carefully, you might make poor decisions based on old rules. Remember, it is all of the documents combined that govern the game and how it is played each year. Here is a summary of these important documents and what they tell us. Field setup. Your guide to properly preparing the field. Rules. Your toolkit for success. A rule that may seem trivial could make the difference in successfully completing a mission. Missions. The detailed instructions that take precedence over all the rules. How and when you choose to complete them are what make the challenge an exercise in strategic thinking and planning. Questions and answers. The online Q&A blog is a very important tool, as it is the place to go for helpful and critical updates. So please do yourself and your team a favor. Take time to review, discuss, and come to an understanding of what all the key documents are telling you before starting your strategy or submitting a question to FLL Challenge support. Now, for a smart move, on to the missions. Smart Move Field Introduction. The primary setting of Smart Move is a test track facility. In it, you will find the following: access markers, loops, warning beacons, sensor walls, vehicle, ramp, passengers, crash test figure, barriers, dynamometer, bridge and bridge decking, yellow and red, target spot. Avoid impacts. Warning beacons. Required condition. Warning beacons need to be upright. Square to the mat. Value, 10 points each. Also, warning beacons are the touch penalty objects for the Smart Move robot game. This means if you touch your vehicle while it's completely out of base, the referee removes one upright beacon each time. The beacons are removed in order from south to north, then from west to east. If there are no upright beacons at the time of the touch, there is no penalty. Avoid impacts. Sensor walls. Avoidance option. Required condition: the sensor walls need to be upright, square to the mat. Any 4 walls can count. Only 4 walls can count. Each upright sensor wall also requires a down access marker. Example: if there are 4 upright walls, but only 3 access markers down, only 3 walls count. Value, 10 points each. Maximum, 40 points. Survive impacts. Sensor walls. Impact option. Required condition: no sensor walls are upright. Value, 40 points. Survive impacts. Single passenger restraint test. Required conditions: the crash test figure needs to be aboard your vehicle for the entire match. The first time your vehicle is without the figure, the referee removes the figure. Any constraint system is okay as long as the figure can be separated quickly after the match. Value, 15 points. Survive impacts. Multiple passenger safety test. Required condition: all 4 people are sitting or standing in or on a transport device of your design, and some portion of that object is in the round target area. Value, 10 points. Survive impacts. Vehicle impact test. Required condition: the truck needs to no longer touch the ramp's red stopper beam. Your entire vehicle needs to be completely out of base when it produces the required condition. Otherwise, the referee removes 2 upright warning beacons in the same manner as 2 touch penalties. Value, 20 points. Gain access to things. Mission: access markers. Required condition: access markers need to be in their down position. Value, 25 points each. Gain access to things. Mission: loops. Required condition: loops need to be in base. Value, 10 points each. Bonus: new technologies can sometimes eliminate your need to travel. They are hard to develop, but each new one makes the next come easier. If all 3 gray loops have reached base, you may take 1 red loop into base by hand. Independent from that, if all 3 red loops have reached base, you may take 1 loop of any color into base by hand. Once earned, these hand freedoms, which are a special exception to the rules, may be used at any time before the match ends. Gain access to places. Choose 1. Required condition: your vehicle needs to be in one of these positions exactly as the match ends. This mission does not affect others. Target spot. Required condition: parked with its drive wheels or treads touching the round target. Value, 25 points. Yellow bridge deck. Required condition: parked with its drive wheels or treads touching your yellow bridge decking, but not touching any red decking or the mat. Value, 20 points. Vehicle sharing. Required condition: parked with its drive wheels or treads touching your red bridge decking, but not touching the mat. Value, 25 points.
Okay. Hello. There we go. So there's a lot that's going on in this game. This game is actually a lot less complicated than any previous year. The previous years, we've actually had teams, especially international teams, who come in and do 3 complete straight 400 matches, 400-point matches. 400 points is the maximum number of points you can get in the average FLL game. And so we were having a problem at the World Championships, where even at the World Championships, a team who gets 3 perfect scores aren't necessarily number 1. You know, you might be number 3 or number 4. So there's definitely a big push to make the game harder. Okay, and then last year there was roughly 28 things that you could be scored on. 28. This year there's about 10. but this is a lot harder. You saw there was a dynamometer on the field. There was no points associated with that dynamometer. It's just pure evil. Okay? As your robot is trying to go after any of the access points, access markers, or any of the sensor walls, or any of the other things that are over there on the whole right-hand side of the field, you've got to get past that dynamometer. And almost every robot that I could consider that would try to go over the dynamometer is going to get stuck on the dynamometer because it just spins on itself. Your wheels get on top of it, and you're just going to be sitting there. So it is just a pure evil little segment there. Four-wheel drive is always going to be a good option, maybe, in this particular game. This particular game has a lot of additional challenges to it. And you can always, any of these videos that you see here, I just literally pulled these. I mean, I've got a special place where I can pull these videos off. But these videos are all available on the First LEGO League website. So you can either go to the US First and navigate your way to the First LEGO League, or you can go to firstlegoleague.org, and it will redirect you straight over to the First LEGO League place where you find all the missions, all the rules, all the field setup, all the Q&A. It's actually a fairly decent setup site. It's really nice. Okay. So let's just take a look at the FLL season at a glance here. There's two primary purposes for the FLL competition, and you're going to hear this sort of repeated in the other sessions, so I'm going to do most of this presentation pretty quick. I've got 10 minutes to do this presentation, and the last time I gave this presentation, it took me an hour and a half. So I'm not going to cover everything, but this presentation is going to be online. It's chock full of stuff, and it's going to be available online. We'll send out links. When we send out the links to the recording, there's a video camera over here doing the recording for us this session. And so any questions you have will be recorded on that. We'll also try to capture any additional questions on the website from other sessions that we have, and we'll send you all that information. But the FLL season has two purposes. You learn and exemplify the core values, and you do research. Okay? And then, of course, build programs and robots and all that kind of stuff. It's all about the core values in your research. There's two primary categories for the FLL competition. You got your project and your research, and then you got the robot game. And so there's three sort of deliverables in each one. You've got to show community awareness. You've got to do the project presentation. You've got to show teamwork. The robot game, obviously you got to build your robot. You've got to present to a group of judges what you did, how you built that robot, and then you have to be able to show teamwork. Teamwork in both places. It's very important. What's the robot game? It's not it is the most visible part of the competition, but it is not the most important. You've got roughly 2 months, 2.5 months, depending on which qualifier you're lucky enough to get into, to build your robot to compete on the challenge. But honestly, a lot of teams wait until the last 4 weeks to do it, and they do fine. Okay? Make sure you get that project done. Elements of the robot game, a bunch of elements of the robot game, we'll sort of cover them. The field, anybody who's returning will see very quickly that there's something missing from that field table, and there's something missing from this field table. There are lights. So last year and in previous years, we had lights that illuminated the field and provided a consistent lighting on the field. Not anymore. Okay, this is they tried it out. We tried it out at the World Festival last year, and it worked great for teams who figured out how to use their light sensors correctly. Okay, so I'll sort of maybe dabble a little bit on how you can program your robot to get around this, but it makes our jobs so much easier. Not having to do power on the field, having to lug all the stuff around for those lights. Every competition that I've ever put on, we've busted lights. When you bust that light, mercury gas goes everywhere. I mean, it's not a good thing. So they finally got rid of it, and I'm all for it. So we're going to try it out this year. If we don't like it for some reason, then we can always go back. It's an optional thing now. But we are definitely going to try without it. You got the game mat. game mat comes with your field setup kit, and you've got mission models to build mission models. Last year, it took 4 people, roughly 4 hours, to build one mission model set. Okay, this year, Randy Hoskin over there and I sat down and built the mission model set in about 2 hours. So that was just, I mean, it's so much easier to build. Game rules, the video talked about the game rules. The game rules are very, very, very important. The game rules aren't the mission rules. The game rules are the general rules. The robot starts off in base. The robot can only be yada 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 yada, so tall, so wide, so whatever. What parts you're allowed to have on your robot, what software you're allowed to program with the robot. You're not allowed to use any text-based programming language, so don't even try. A lot of different parameters you have. The team and gameplay rules about how the robot has to start, what you get when you grab your robot, or what you get taken away when you grab your robot outside. A lot of the stuff that was in the video. And then, of course, just the overall field setup, field game rules. You've got the game objectives, which are the missions. Each mission will describe something about the game. Okay? Now, every year, the past 4 years, we have found, much later on, an inconsistency between the video and the missions. Okay? The videos are for illustration purposes only. Okay? They may or may not be correct. So, and also any of the Q&A or any of the game stuff that happens may actually conflict with the mission descriptions, the mission text. The mission text takes precedence unless Scott Evans comes from, who actually, from First Lego League, who does all the missions and everything, unless he comes down and says, this Q&A overrides the mission text. Okay? The mission text is the mission text. That is everything. And then any kind of holes in the mission text, the Q&A will try to fill those holes. There's multiple kinds of missions that you have. There's missions where you push things around. There's missions where you grab things and bring it to base. There's missions where you take stuff from base and take it out. There's ways of manipulating the field in ways that you never thought possible. We'll talk about some of those, or maybe we won't. We've got 15 minutes left. But there's a lot of different types of missions. Here are your types of missions. Object delivery, recovery, or transfer. Object activation. So those, when you have to go out and bump something to make it do something, that's an activation. A common action. This year, the most evil common action is the robots, okay? Robots have the opportunity to collide with each other this year, okay? That no other game yet has allowed robots to come into contact with one another. So watch out. Because of the way the bridge is, you can actually go up the bridge, go into the red section, and there's another table literally sitting right on the other side. Let's see, where's it? There it is. The tournament table. You got it is rotated 180 degrees on the other side. So you will have a bridge that comes up, and the other team will have a bridge that comes up. And the two red sections are going to meet each other. So you could have one robot trying to go for the red decking, and another robot trying to go for the red decking, and you could be completely blown off the bridge by the other robot. It does sound like fun, doesn't it? So be aware of that. That's why you also have the extra, your robot can go to that location down below the target area, the target spot, and get the same points as being up on the red. So if you don't want to risk damaging your robot, you can just do that. Then of course there's an end of game robot position. There's always something that happens. Your robot can be someplace at the end of the game. That's actually the shared area as well. So at the end of the game, if your robot is touching the red decking or touching just the yellow decking or on the target spot, so they can sort of combine those two this year. And then penalty missions. There's always a penalty, the touch penalty, where your robot is outside the base and the robot freaks out, goes nuts. You have to grab the robot and bring the robot back. We penalize you for that. Okay? There's one really important piece of the penalty this year. Realize that there's no requirement that says that anything has to be touching the mat. Okay? If it doesn't say you don't have to touch the mat, you don't have to touch the mat. Which is really interesting because the penalty objects, okay, those marker beacons, the penalty objects say if they're upright, we take them away. But what if none of them have to be upright at the moment you do your penalty? We don't take them away. So you can knock them all over, okay, then bring them all back to base. In base, you can touch anything you want with your hands. And before the game ends, you can set them back up. Okay? Or you can set them back up and put them inside of something that you got. They don't even have to be touching the mat, as long as they're vertical with the mat. It doesn't have to be touching the mat either. A lot of different ways. This game, you can manipulate this game in ways that I never thought possible. Okay, it's great. A lot of stuff you can do. And they're all legal. Almost all of them. The game Q&A. The game Q&A, there's already 7 elements on the game Q&A. Okay, now, they try to make the rules so that there's almost nothing on the game Q&A. Then, of course, when they thought they had it perfect, there were 108 items in the game Q&A one year. The game Q&A is generally just trying to clarify some hole that was left in the rules. Okay, they try to really bulletproof those rules, but if they miss something, it'll be put in the game Q&A. The game Q&A can trash your strategy. Okay, so you have to keep up with that game Q&A. If your robot wants to go off and do something and do a pirouette and then come back, and the game Q&A says robots may not do a pirouette, you just been hosed. They try not to hose you toward the end. They're very careful about what they do at least 3 or 4 weeks before the competition. So mid-October, they will try not to put anything in there that will completely trash your rules. And if they do, let us know. Okay? Not us, let them know. Okay? Fll Tech at usfirst.org. It's on the game Q&A website. It's the email address that you email the Fll Tech and the person who actually does all the Q&As. If your strategy is completely being trashed by something they do, let them know. They've done exceptions before. They said, okay, you can do a pirouette if your robot is colored yellow. Okay, fine. They've done little exceptions like that before because they realize that having to scrap your robot or scrap your strategy and redo it, 2 weeks before your competition, that's just evil. Okay. Preparing for the tournament, you have to determine what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. All of them is not a practical answer. Try to figure out exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. Determine what order you're going to do it in. There's a lot of different missions that can be done side by side or in parallel. So your robot starts off in base, goes out and does 2 missions, comes back. And then your robot goes out and does something and comes back, goes out and comes back, and then does something that does like 4 missions all at once. So depending on how you want to solve the game, you have to just figure out what order you're going to do things in. You have to determine what attachments you're going to build. Your robot, you can reconfigure your robot anytime. 5 minutes. Practice, practice, practice. And I'll throw in like that 3 more times. Practice, practice, practice. The teams who actually do practice before the competition score higher than teams that don't practice. You can have the best robot in the world that does everything. But if your students, your team members, don't know how to make that robot do it, it's worth 0 to you. Tournament day, you get to practice and pick robots in the pits. You get 3 2.5-minute matches. There's 2 teams playing side by side, and you're randomly paired up against other teams. You may end up being randomly paired against somebody from your own school. So if your school happens to host or fund 4 teams, you may have to play all 3 of your partner teams. That's just sort of how it happens. When I do the randomizations, because I do all the schedules for all the qualifiers in the championship tournament, I usually randomize a list about 1,000 times and then start my pairings. And if it just sort of happens that you play against your teams, sorry. Your robot is reconfigurable. Make sure it's robust. If your robot falls off the bridge, oh well. Make sure that your batteries can be replaceable. Your software, here's some good tips about doing software. There's a lot of tips and tricks that FLL teams have learned in the past to make them more efficient when they're playing. And to save space on the robot, because the robot only has a certain amount of space on the brick. Reading between the lines is a big thing, okay? It sometimes takes an experienced person to be able to read between the lines. Sometimes you'll see something like, hey, it doesn't say I don't have to whatever. And if it doesn't say it, then it doesn't say it. There's a lot of different ways to get around certain pieces in the rules. It can be stressful, okay? Try to cheer other teams. Don't allow negative attitudes. Every competition I go to, I hear at least one person say, oh no, we suck again. You don't want to let that happen, all right? The coaches should definitely look down upon that, okay? Always think positive. And just remember, the last bullet there, what you discover is more important than what you win. Remind your parents that, please. And then, of course, coach's last notes here. The robot game is usually used as bait for research. Hey, do some research and I'll let you do a mission. All team members have to compete in every aspect of the game, and the research, and the project, and whatever. When you come into the project presentation and there's somebody standing off in the corner who obviously doesn't want to get picked, we're going to pick on them. When they come into the robot design and programming, they're going to get picked on. When it comes to the game, a judge may pick on them. So everybody needs to participate in everything. All teams have to give a project presentation. If you decide that you only want to play the game, you are not going to go to the championship, I guarantee you. Okay? It's a guaranteed fact. Because if you don't do a project presentation, you can't win an award. Guaranteed, you're not allowed to win an award. You don't win an award, you don't get to go to the championship competition. Period. Okay? And definitely, while you're in the season, invite the parents in to see the progress of the team. A lot of times, you can get the parents to actually be, a coach or, somebody who can help out. If you have a problem with, oh my gosh, I'm stressed, I have too much to do, bring in some parents. They'll help out, trust me. Once they see what's going on, they'll see the importance of it. All right, so I have 30 seconds for questions. If anybody has any, yes, sir.
Are you going to post the presentation on Yahoo groups today?
Question is, am I going to post the presentation today? I'm going to really try to today. I'm really going to try to post it on the Yahoo groups today. It sort of depends on how long it takes to do the conversion, the uploading, and all the stuff that has to happen. But I will definitely try to post that on the Yahoo groups today. Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything on the missions that if you don't do X, you get 0? Like if you don't end in the right place, does it totally nullify everything else?
So the question was with the missions, if the missions say, if you don't do this mission, then you can't win anything, any points on anything else. And the answer is no. All the missions are completely independent of one another, unless they specify. And none of them specify that they're completely independent. Except there's the sensor walls say that if you're going to have the sensor walls up, and you want to get points for the sensor walls being up, you have to make the markers. You have to make the markers go down. And if all the markers are up, you don't get any points for any of the sensor walls. But those are the only two that are tied together. Any other questions? Yes.
In the video, at one point, the sensor walls were up, to get the markers and everything.
Yes.
But there's another mission where the sensor walls have to be down.
The sensor walls have, and the question here was, what was that up with the two missions with the sensor walls? There's actually two variants of the sensor walls, okay? The sensor wall, the back sensor wall, there's actually 5 sensor walls. Only 4 of them count for whatever you're doing. One of the sensor walls is already in a down position, and it's sitting up off the mat, okay? So there's one guaranteed to be down if you want to knock 3 of them over. But on the back wall, there's one sensor wall that's almost impossible to knock over. It's really tough. So they have 2 options. Either you have 4 that are up, or you have 4 that are down. If 4 of them are up, you have to do the combination of the walls that are up plus the markers that are down, which making those markers go down and leaving the walls up is really tough. Okay? Now remember, it doesn't say that the walls have to stay up, it doesn't say the walls have to be touching the mat. Bring the walls back to base, make them up inside the base, you're done. Or you can knock them all down and get points. got 2 seconds. Yes, sir.
Sensor walls, you can get partial score on that, right?
No, you cannot get, you can get partial scores as long as the walls are up.
Yeah.
You have to get 4 walls up. There's no partial to that. 4 walls have to be up. And you get partial points for each marker that's down. Okay? So you got to have 4 walls that are up, and then you get partial for each marker that goes down. So if 4 walls are up and 1 marker is down, you get points for 1 mark for 1 wall. One question here. Amy, do you have a question?
Oh yeah, my team decided they just stayed in base and didn't mess with those touch penalties. They could get 80 points. Is that true?
The question here is, if the robot stays in base and doesn't do anything, you get 80 points. Yeah, that's true. But you're not going to be competitive.
Oh, I know. They were
Yes.
You're telling me we can do nothing and get 80 points, and I'm like,
Yes, you can do nothing and get 80 points. You can almost do nothing and still get 100 points. So there you go. Okay, thank you. And what you want to do